Okay, so let us attempt to look at let's look at the full moon that's happening in Taurus, and that's happening on November 5th of this good year, 2025, November 5th, 5 a.m., so very early in the morning. Now, I have not really looked at this chart yet, so this is going to be my first look. Let's get a bit of a bigger pen and jump in. My plan is to honestly just go around the clock here. I'm not sure where I'm going to start, but we're just going to literally hit every chart point that you see on the screen and their relationships to each other. So, how about we just start with uh, the moon itself, which is right here. So this is the moon at the full moon, again, November 5th, around 5 a.m. We know this is a full moon because we have the moon making an exact opposition to the sun, 1322 and 1322. So the first thing to know is that this is happening in the Taurus zodiac sign. That's this symbol. And any full moon always activates an entire axis. So it's not just the Taurus full moon, it's also Scorpio season. Scorpio season because the sun is right here in the sign of Scorpio. So let's talk about a full moon in Taurus at the Scorpio Taurus axis. This is a very interestingly materialistic full moon that has us simultaneously very connected to the actual core value of something on an intangible level. Okay. So Taurus is about what is tangible. And so that's where I'm getting this word materialistic. A Taurus full moon is really getting the fruits of your labor, and it's balanced and it's very manifest, you could say, because your soul is also in the equation. Your soul being Scorpio, the more unseen reality that always has a part to play. So that's kind of the nature of this time. There is a very real and clear material manifestation that's happening in any Taurus full moon, and that is because we have a balance between what we can touch, taste, smell with our sensory body, and that's Taurus. There's a feeling of like wanting to survive and thrive. And, the sun is beaming its rays from Scorpio, which is our soul. And the sun anywhere is about how we are enjoying our life, being creative. So there's something very creative that we're doing with our soul at this time that is aligning us very, very well and easily to something tangible, something sensory. Okay? Tangible sensory material manifestation at this full moon in Taurus. Now, let us get into the nuance of what this all will likely look like? What is the energy of it? Because this could be literally anything. Okay. To do that, we're going to look at the rulerships. Okay. And in order to not jump the gun, I'm going to look at the ruler of Scorpio first, which is the planet Pluto. Okay. And this is Pluto. So let's talk about what Pluto's up to at this full moon so that we can also know what the influence is, right, of the energy of these rays from the sun that are giving us this full moon. So Pluto is the heaviest hitter planet that we work with in astrology. That's because it is slow. It's a generational planet. And it speaks to the soul. That's its rulership of Scorpio, also the soul. Scorpio and Pluto are both archetypes of the unknown, the depths, the occult, the shadows. And ultimately, what Scorpio wants is trust. It wants a process of trust, whether that be money, emotions, sensitivity, or even planning. Okay. Um, Scorpio is a powerful sign, and Pluto is a powerful planet. Of course, we associate in our world money and power, right? The idea of true resource that comes from within. Okay. And this also manifests as deep emotional awareness, deep sensitivity to nuance and strategy to kind of survive, because otherwise, Scorpio is so sensitive that it is completely open to everyone's stuff. And when I say stuff, I mean everyone's desires, insecurities. Pluto and Scorpio are both like X-ray machines, and not everyone knows how to turn their X-ray machine on and off. Some people use this X-ray machine towards quote unquote good and others towards quote unquote bad. But again, what I like to emphasize with Scorpios truly is just we're on a journey of trust, whether that be through money, emotion, sensitivity, or some type of strategy that you're planning. Okay. In the sign of Scorpio, oops, I mean, in Aquarius, the planet Pluto brings all of this sensitivity and trust into the realm of Aquarius, which is the edge of known reality. Okay. And this is where we get the application or the way people will link Pluto with technology, networks. And then that leads us into the groups and the ideas that really ultimately allow us to have an observer stance, right? We don't get so identified with our individuality in Aquarius in the same way as we would in, let's say, the opposite sign of Leo. Okay. So, right off the bat, we have a very interesting play because while we don't have any planets in Leo, we are sharply contrasting the sun, which is the natural ruler of Leo, and Scorpio or Pluto, right? Having the sun in Scorpio is like having a very big mix of like a personal will with the soul, like being very soul identified to a creative practice, in what might otherwise be kind of just Leo can sometimes just be for show. Okay. But Pluto right now in Aquarius has all of our attention, all of our focus on the groups, on technology and networks. And ultimately, it's about intelligence, it's about the edge of our known reality and the truth of our own observational reality. Like we're just observing reality, okay? But this Pluto draws our attention there so deeply on a soul level that we can't ignore this. This is very much so social media and also the attention economy. So that's really what's motivating our deep soul creative practice right now. So it's very likely that you are working on something creative at this full moon that is coming out of your soul's desire to tap into the attention economy, to tap into the edge of known reality as you know it. Okay? That that is what is beaming into this full moon, all of that energy. Now, if I quickly take this one step further, Pluto has a ruler right now. And the ruler of Pluto right now is Uranus in the sign of Gemini. Uranus is retrograding, and it is very soon to step out of Gemini, and it's very soon to go back into the sign of Taurus. That won't be for another few days after November 5th, around the 7th, I think. Um, but as of this full moon, Uranus is still in the sign of Gemini, okay? Uranus carries the same meaning and the same archetype as Aquarius, and so we have the same themes of intelligence, the edge of the known, and we also just get Uranus is really breaking down barriers. Okay, and it's breaking down barriers in the sign of Gemini, which is our mind. This is where all of our thoughts that are no longer helping us are actually getting a real shakeup. Okay, and I won't go too deeply into this because we actually get another ruler. We're shaking up our minds. As we shake up our minds, then we are connected to this collective consciousness and the attention economy that's giving us a reason to be creative. And that creative energy is really manifesting into something at this full moon. But there's one more layer. There's actually two more layers. It's not just that we're shaking up our minds, because the ruler of Gemini is Mercury down here. Mercury is the sign of our rational logic, of our brain, is the ruler of data itself and pieces of things that you get to decide how they move into an order. Okay, how you're going to string a bunch of words together to make a sentence. All of the words you have access to is Mercury. It's about exchanging. And right now, Mercury's in the sign of Sagittarius, which is a very fun, somewhat challenging place for Mercury because Sagittarius wants the sentence to be spoken already. Sagittarius doesn't want to worry about the details of which word goes where. Sagittarius just wants to get the vibe out. It wants to get the point across. And so Mercury is very wise in this placement in Sagittarius, but it's also less precise than maybe it's used to. This is arguably a very poetic placement. And so we have like a desire to express belief in something with Mercury in Sagittarius. Okay, desire to express a belief in something. The desire to express itself is Mercury, and a belief is Sagittarius. But here's the thing. In a few days after this full moon, Mercury will start moving retrograde, which means that right now Mercury is moving very slowly. And so there probably really is a belief that we are thinking about quite deeply. And we are considering all the different ways we know that belief is true. And we are about to enter a few week period of really looking very deeply at that. And because it's so close to the planet Mars, also, we are reconsidering the actions that we take from this belief. And this has been something we've been working on since the new moon in Libra that happened right around the end of Libra here on October 21st. That's when Mercury first conjuncted Mars and also went into shadow. And just to make things more confusing, Mercury in Sagittarius right now is ruled by Jupiter in Cancer all the way up here. Okay. And this was the last rulership because anything in Cancer is ruled by the moon, which brings us right back to the full moon in Taurus. So let's talk about Jupiter. Jupiter is our wisdom. It's where we're learning things and we're really working with the bigger picture here. Things like our beliefs and the expansion of our right brain. Okay. And in the sign of Cancer, this is like going to learn all of the different emotions that exist. This is really a place to expand not just your emotional capacity, but more so your emotional wisdom. So like what is what is the sage advice that Cancer has? Cancer is ultimately about safety and growth, like nurturing. So what are you nurturing right now that is leading you to greater wisdom, greater growth? And the answer is this Taurus moon. It's whatever this thing that has manifested is. Okay? That is the thing that you are also reconsidering down here with Mercury in Sagittarius, as it rules basically everything else. Okay? So look at all this stuff that I've written. You see, there's only, change color here, a few planets that I haven't talked about yet. Okay, I haven't spoken about Venus, which is actually very important because she's the ruler of Taurus. We'll get to that in just a minute. But I also haven't talked about Neptune, Saturn, the nodes, or Chiron yet. Okay? But look at where all of this is like happening, right? This is the full moon. And there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of weight really on both sides of the equation here, I would say. Both on the kind of more internal soul level, I would put Pluto in this mix too, and on the kind of more like material, emotional side of the world. Okay. So right off the bat, we know that this full moon is really a manifestation of the Jupiter lessons we've been learning for quite some time. Those Jupiter lessons are still being refined through this Mercury retrograde. And yet, there's a ton of like reclaiming of our minds that we're doing, regardless of where we're at in a more rational process. Okay. And that process is really meeting us at our deepest desire in Pluto, in Aquarius, merging with a larger collective. And then we're really doing something creative with that, right? So let me erase all of this and reiterate some stuff and talk about these points that I haven't talked about yet. Okay, so the full moon here, as I said, this is the sign of Taurus, and it's about material reality. It's about enjoying the fruits of your labor, and it's also about sensory and biological drive. So to feel things that we want to feel and to like sensuality and sexuality is a very Taurus thing. In Taurus, it is generated more from a biological drive to like procreate for the species, right? Scorpio is also very sensual and sexual, but from more of a psychic or psychological union um, with the divine or with the other, okay? Taurus is a little bit more practical in just getting what it wants. Scorpio is a much more deep and esoteric, okay? But let's look at the ruler of the moon, which we haven't done yet. The ruler of the moon is this Venus. Venus is always the ruler of the moon, and this is a very, very strong position for Venus to be in. And this is where I'm going to start talking about aspects in a bigger way. We have Venus in her home sign of Libra. And so there's no more rulerships. Venus rules herself here, which is a very strong position for Venus, which to me makes this full moon then that much stronger. Now it's interesting because Taurus and Libra are the two signs that are ruled by Venus. Taurus is the inward manifestation, Libra is the outward manifestation. And today, I mean, at this full moon, we have very strong outward manifestation of Venus and very strong inward manifestation of Libra. Libra is reliance on others, and being open to others. Taurus is reliance on self and openness to the self. You know, these signs, Taurus and Libra, are in a natural inconjunct to each other, which basically means they're not quite at a perfect opposition, which would be the Scorpio Taurus, or it would be the Aries Libra, but rather they're just one sign away from being really in that strong opposition. So it can be a little awkward, right? How do you both rely on yourself and be open to others? And why are they also both ruled by Venus? don't have the answer. But it's interesting to think about when it comes to Venusian themes like relationships, money, getting what we want. There's often a balance that needs to come into play, whether that's balance with another person through this Aries polarity, or there's a balance in what it actually very much so deeply means. Instead of, hold on. Okay, hopefully you can hear me still fine. So yeah, we are kind of balancing out some, awkward energy. And inconjunct can be a little bit awkward because these two places don't really see each other very clearly. But to me, it doesn't really matter all that much. I still see this as a very nice full moon because Libra as the ruler, Venus as the ruler, rather, is so clear and unified. But there's some other stuff going on with Venus that I want to talk about. Okay. The first thing I want to talk about is this placement of 28 degrees. Okay. We had a new moon in Libra, and that was actually the new moon that began this cycle on, yeah, it was October 21st. We had a new moon in Libra at 28 degrees of Libra. And that new moon grew into this, actually, the new moon is dark. That new moon grew into this very full moon right here. And that new moon in Libra was also ruled by Venus, the same Venus. Venus was in Libra, probably in the early degrees of Libra. Venus still, 2 weeks later, is in her home sign of Libra at this full moon, which is Venus ruled again. And so this is going to be one of the sharpest, clearest cycles that we've had in quite a while. Excuse me, from my perspective. This this degree, 28 degree, the end of Libra here is a real hot button place for a few reasons. But the fact that the new moon, the ruler of the new moon and the ruler of the full moon, Venus, is at the same place at both of these lunations, to me means there's something very significant about this 28-degree mark as a barometer of what this manifestation actually looks like. Because we seeded that on October 21st. And then we watched it grow this whole time. And then the ruler caught up with the exact position of the new moon. Okay, so the ruler of the full moon knows what our intention was for the full moon, even before the full moon got there, right? I I don't know how else to put this. Venus is representing the very thing that we seeded. It's that very place that we seeded our new moon intention. Again, on October 21st. And this doesn't always happen, where the ruler of both lunations in one lunation cycle stays in its ruling sign and finds its way exactly to the place of the new moon by the full moon. There's something up with this. There's something up with this. This 28 degrees, okay, is making several aspects that I want to talk about. And it's very similar to the aspects that were being made at the new moon on October 21st. So we're very familiar with this aspect energy. The very first one I want to talk about is this square to Pluto. Okay. This is what's called a third quarter square. Venus moves this way, which means she's gone all the way this way um, until this day, which is again November, what did I say, 5? Um, is that right? It might be November. I think it's November 5th. Yeah, let me double check. Mm, yeah, I think it's November 5th. Anyway, Venus is made a conjunction all the way back in February of 2024, if I'm not wrong, um, and has since made a conjunction to Pluto in February of 2024 and has since 2024 traveled all the way around the zodiac here to get to where it is right now at this full moon, which is about to be at a 270-degree angle to Pluto. That's what a last quarter square is. Okay, there's another type of square, which would have been a first quarter square. It was only 90 degrees. Okay, that's not what we have here. We have a last quarter square. I've been thinking about last quarter squares as opportunities to say no to something. Okay. And it's the weird thing. By saying no to one thing, you get to say yes to something else. And it has to be in that order. First, it's a no, and then second, it's a yes. Okay. And so I think the thing we're going to be speaking to, we're going to be saying this answer to, is really Pluto. So there's some group, idea, um, something that has our attention, something that brings us to the edge of something, basically something powerful, something we've been giving our power to, in essence. Um, we've been doing it in one way for this whole cycle since February 2024. And this is really the time where we realize it's time to say no to the way we've been doing that. That's really what a last quarter square is. At a last quarter square, you realize that your intention at the beginning of the cycle, which would have been February 2024, you've pretty much gotten what you've needed out of it. And, we're still a few months away from Venus coming to make another conjunction to Pluto to reset that intention and start again. So it's not like we're getting the brand new full understanding of what we're saying yes to, but what we have to do in this space is we have to make space. We have to make space for reflection about the past cycle. Okay. And so Venus-Pluto cycle is all about how we are open, which is Venus, to power. All right. Which can look like obsession. It can look like love, romance. It can look like selling art, for example, right? Like the value Pluto of, or like, trusting the investment in something. And really, the investment piece is Pluto, but it's also like a social investment with Aquarius. And so there's something very like Venus in Libra is like fine art. There's some very beautiful thing that we have. Okay? We have it. It's like a painting. We have it, and there's some social investment that we want to make with this painting, but we have to say, oops, we have to say no first. We have to stop the way we have been valuing the work socially until now. And I think, the exact square doesn't happen until a few days after this full moon, the exact square to Venus and Pluto, I mean, which means that at the full moon itself, we're just going to be feeling like some tension building up. It might not be the day itself that we say no. It might be, but because the exact square hasn't passed yet, it's not like the tension is still building to say no and to start making space for something unknown. But nonetheless, all of that is there. All of that is there. Okay, there's a few other things. Primarily with Venus, still on Venus. So again, this is that like painting or this piece of art or what I haven't talked about yet is relationships, which is a huge Libra thing in balance. So this could be like a very powerful relationship that you've been trying to show up to in one way, but you have to say no to it, to that way. You have to say yes to this new relationship in a totally new way and make space for a new expression of it to emerge on its own. And it's not really just this square we have to Pluto that's putting pressure on Venus, putting pressure on the relationship or the artwork. Ultimately, Venus is just like we're very open to balance. I think we really want that. And in fact, the moon is showing us that there's something tangible that has like manifested as a representation of something we can rely on when it comes to finding balance and harmony and being open to that. Okay? But there's pressure along with it from Pluto, and there's also pressure from Uranus and Neptune. It's called a yod when we have two inconjuncts. Okay? These are sextiling each other, Uranus and Neptune. I talked about Uranus, but Neptune is the unknowable truth. Okay? It rules itself because it's back in Pisces. And there's something really dreamy. This inconjunct is about putting pressure. There's a pressure to show up to your own to truth itself. It might not be your own truth anymore, but to truth itself. Um, just like complete possibilities, no boundaries of possibilities here. This is what's called a disseminating inconjunct because Venus has already made an opposition to Neptune and she's coming off of that opposition. So this is about a social somewhere where we are showing up socially, and we have to be open. Again, emphasis on being open to where the truth wants our attention, where the truth wants our artwork. So there's pressure to know what the truth is here. Okay? And then there's also pressure. This is a waxing in conjunct, which means it's still leading up to oppose Uranus, which incidentally Mars, Mercury are both opposing Uranus. But this means we're still learning the words of what this relationship or what this piece of art, what this openness to balance, what's the intelligence there? This is Uranus. There's some intelligence in your artwork that you're still refining. So you're saying, like, you're making space from a big pressure of power that wants to engage with your work. And you're also doing a lot of adjustments to what some mystical truth is about your work and like what are the right words that speak about your work intelligently, okay? This sextile that we are in with Neptune and Uranus, to me, it really speaks to like we're still in a learning phase. Um, we're in a learning phase about what is the ultimate truth and what is the edge of that truth, which is Uranus. And so this is a much longer cycle. I'm talking decades, like 3 or 4 decades we're in. So don't expect to figure that out at this full moon. But this Venus is very open to that longer, larger question that we're still dealing with over decades. But nonetheless, this is a full moon in Taurus, ruled by Venus in Libra, which is completely about like something showing up, something very manifest, something we've wanted since the new moon. Um, yeah. Speaking of Uranus and finding the words for something, we have Mars past an exact, but still pretty exact opposition to Uranus at this full moon. And that is pretty fun, I would say. It's pretty intense. This is our will, which is Mars, like our behaviors, actions, like what we're doing all the time anyway, is now in a very meaningful part of the sky and something where like we're very feeling very free, like we just want to go and explore. And it's kind of like hitting up against our mind and all the work that we're wanting to do to change our mind. And I think I like this because this is saying like, yeah, I can liberate myself from negative mindset. Let me take action on what I believe. Mars in Sagittarius, ruled by that same Jupiter in Cancer. So the decisions that we are making are not frivolous, like they're very emotionally grounded. Okay, which I like to see. Again, I don't really care so much that Mercury's going retrograde. I don't. Something really nice at this full moon um, is the fact that Jupiter and Saturn, oh man, Jupiter and Saturn are in a very strong trine to each other. This means that we have an opportunity to do something big. Very fun opportunity to do something big. And this is before Jupiter turns retrograde, although Jupiter is soon to turn retrograde. This is a big opportunity that we have to really refine our emotional body. And it's a little bit wide, right? But the moon is kind of sextiling both of these widely, but that's amazing. And that's because the sun is about to enter in to make this a grand water trine once the sun chugs along through the end of Scorpio here. And then we'll get the big water trine. But right now, I wouldn't say it's super activated yet, although it's pretty activated. There's a huge opportunity here to align what our work is in the world with what we've been learning and where our wisdom is. And like Jupiter is about understanding and like integrating knowledge, and Saturn is like the laws of the land. And so if what you're learning can be integrated into the laws of the land, then there's an opportunity to see coherence in meeting your goals, especially goals that are Piscean, Cancerian, Scorpion, like very water goals, which are emotional. They're very dynamic, creative, sensitive, right? Any goals that need these qualities, you can really just whoosh, take off. This trine is very powerful. So if we know that right now, whatever we're doing has the potential to take off, and what we're doing right now with Mars and Sagittarius is we are free. Okay, we really want to follow our dreams, our beliefs, and we've been following our dreams and beliefs, and we got zinged by our own intelligence with Mars opposing Uranus. Mars is also making a sextile to Pluto. There's just a lot of good things happening here. So what we're doing is actually going to work out. And what we're doing is expanding our safety, expanding our growth, expanding our capacity to nurture something in the world, which is Cancer. And we're also expanding our spiritual authority. We're expanding the fact that we decide where our baseline is. Pisces doesn't end, but Saturn in Pisces says we have to choose where the end is. Okay? Saturn is ruled by Neptune in Pisces, the ruler of Pisces, and so this is a lot of infinite possibility here. So Saturn is going to be very important to give us a baseline and say, here's where, here's what we're going to do with this infinite potential. we're going to bring our wisdom into it. And then that moon, the full freaking moon in Taurus rules Jupiter. Some material manifestation of our emotional wisdom that we've gained in a relationship. Since the new moon, October 21st, really on the dot. Okay. And I do think it's going to be the relationship that's pushing us to confront our deepest desire. This is going to be a very deep social desire, humanitarian desire. And we're really confronting that desire, and how we've been working with it. This relationship is pushing us to do that. The relationship is also having us adjust quite dramatically to infinite possibility and to the unboundedness of our own intelligence. But our own intelligence is we're already acting on that at this time. We're acting on our beliefs and our dreams, and it's zinging us into our own intelligence, however that goes for you. Okay? There is a material manifestation of our emotional wisdom. We gained this emotional wisdom in a relationship. And that relationship very likely started at the new moon on October 21st. In the days prior, we had just said yes to that emotional wisdom. There was a leap that we took because Venus would have just squared Jupiter. But it's really not just a material manifestation, it's like a whole emotional logic that's kind of clicking into place with the Jupiter Saturn trine. And while Taurus is very material, because we have the Saturn Neptune balsamic conjunction still, I don't know if this manifestation itself gives us ground that we feel like we can stand on for a really long time, but it is proof. It's like proof of our worth. Okay. Let me see how to go over this one more time. Yeah, maybe I'll just say that Saturn's getting awfully close to the North Node again. And so there is really a responsibility that we're wanting to take that has to do with our creative soul power, because the sun is in a very closer tight of a trine to the North Node. I really haven't been talking about this Jupiter Chiron square very much. It's a first quarter square. We are using our emotional wisdom to really heal ourselves, but it's a choice that we have to make. This is a yes choice because it's a first quarter square. But the Saturnian realm is a bit more important than I think maybe we've been feeling up until this point. So there is something sturdy or tangible about some truth that's important to us, some spiritual perspective. But this opposition's already gone exact. So we've already made a decision to do something. We have proof. We have proof that we can get what we want. And I think it's just that fun thing that happens when you get what you want and then you're like, oh shit, what's next? I have to claim this and hold some space so that I can also move forward and keep going. Okay, well, that's been very, very interesting. I'll end it there. Goodbye for now.